Now, in this chapter 10, we are going to discuss about loading the data into dimension employee table, which is SCD type 2, slowly changing dimension type 2 will be discussed in this mapping. Before this review of the previous chapter, we discussed about dimension customers, loading of the CD type 1 implementation. CD type 1, slowly changing dimension type 1. The definition of the slowly changing dimension type 1 is it contains, the dimension table contains current data. So if a customer ID comes in, the logic is if the customer ID comes in and if that customer ID exists in my target table, that is in my dimension table, I will update the record in my dimension customer table. If the particular customer ID does not exist in my dimension table, I insert it as a new record into my dimension table. For this, to find the record exists or not in my target dimension table, we use the lookup transformation. Then there are two DML activities. If the record exists, you update it. If the record does not exist, you insert it. Single stream of data, you are splitting into two streams. So we use the router transformation to identify if the record exists, to stream the data which the record exists in the target table, or the record does not exist, that is a particular customer ID does not exist. To stream that data, we use the router transformation. Our lookup transformation gives you the related values to identify. So the lookup transformation functionality is to get related values. For this, we discussed in the employees' salaries mapping. Our lookup transformation is to give you the find out if the record exists or not. For that purpose, we use the lookup transformation. In this example, we used for customer ID, does it exist in my target table or not? Then in the router transformation, we stream the data to find if the record exists or not. If that value which is written from the lookup transformation for that particular record is null value, then we consider it as a new record. If that particular customer ID exists in my target table, then the lookup will return a value. If lookup returns a value, then it is the record exists in my target table. So I stream that data to update it. So till before this mapping, we were inserting the data directly into the target table. But here we have a situation where either you insert or delete the data, or insert or update the data in the target table. So for that purpose, we use a transformation called update strategy transformation. The purpose of update strategy transformation is to either insert, update, delete, or reject the data, to fire a DML activity, fire an insert statement, fire update statement, fire a delete statement based on some condition within the informatica mapping. Then you use update strategy transformation. So we use two update strategy transformations, one to insert the data into the target table, the other to update the record in the target table. And also we discussed the lookup transformation. When you are doing a lookup on a table, to get the data into the cache at runtime, it will fire a select statement because it is a table. We remove the columns of the lookup which are not required for us for a better performance. Means if you remove the columns, which columns you need only on that select statement will be fired on the table on which you are doing the lookup, so that your memory, your cache size will decrease. Unused columns will capture the space in this lookup transformation cache. So whichever is not required, we remove it. Then the performance of the lookup will increase by keeping only the columns on of the table on which you are doing the lookup, so that your performance of the overall mapping increases. So basically, lookup transformation, if you are doing a lookup on a table, it will fire a select statement, keep the columns which are required for us, remove all the other columns for better performance. So this is the way we discussed in CD type 1 implementation in the previous chapter. Now the current mapping which we are going to discuss in this chapter 10 is to load data into dimension employee table for the concept of CD type 2. Now, as per this requirement, we have already loaded the data into HTC employee table. Now we are going to load data into the CD type 2. There are 2 days of worth of data of January 2nd, 2003 and January 3rd, 2003. 2 sets of data which have to be loaded into this dimension employee table. The mapping of loading the data in this employee January 2nd already. Regarding the January 3rd, 2003, how but we will now focus on the understanding that we have already loaded the data into January 2nd, 2003. The data has to be loaded into dimension employee type, and every time you look at the data into target later number whenever you insert the data into the target. Let us recap what we discussed in the data warehouse concepts of CD type 2, dimension type 2, and contains history plus current data in dimension type. So let us assume payment terms that you have a regional office, regional employee joined on San Jose on January 2nd, 2003. Data is inserted. 102 joined in Texas on January 2nd, 2003. That has been inserted into the register office. Now it has been sent to the office to be a post. The data which was created on January 2nd, 2003 sent and loaded into the head office. Here what happens? Head office, when they get that information, they will insert the records. They will generate their own sequence number, and with the assumption that date entered, start date on which that employee joined the organization, date he was said, that is the start date of the start date. Why we need a start date and end date? Because capture we need start and end, like the resume have the project start and end date, and whichever project does not have an end date, that means we're on the current project, and all the previous projects are history. So you insert the second record in head office, clerk will insert it. Then next day, let us assume this. Regional office, you have 2 records in head office. Records 1 and in data, insert it. The regional 101 moved San Jose January 3rd to 3. So in the register of regional office, let's assume that they update the record. 101 has been updated on January 3rd, 2000. So which records the clerk will send? The records which are created or modified on January 3rd. For January 2nd, data was already sent. We will take only January data, sheet of paper, send it to the head office. From that head office, now the logic. What he will do, if 10 checks 103 exists or not, does not, then he will insert the record 103 and the start date will be date entered. Then check if 101 exists in head office. If exists, like your resume, what you do as you move to a new project, update the end date of your resume. End date of your resume of the previous project. Start a new project in January. Previous project you end date at December. That is monthly. It is there. Here it is day wise. What you do if the employee moves to Virginia on January 3rd, 2003, at all employee had an address is there in the head office. Previous record, you go and update it. The end date, how you update it? Date entered -1. 3rd January to -1 is 2nd January 2003. We'll update the 101 record. End date. Then we'll insert this record of 101 Virginia 3rd January head office. Along with the new sequence number. We are holding the current and history data for head office register called a C type 2. Now we'll go further. 1404 joined in Phoenix, January 4th. Office they have inserted the data. 101 moved from Virginia to Florida on January 3. So what we do? Update the record in the regional office of 101, Florida 4th January 3. Now which records we will take it from the head office from the regional records which were created January Phoenix, updated 101 to Florida on January, that is the records we will and send it up to the office. Now the head office reviewed the. So now what this clerk will can do for a type 2, check if 104 exists or not. If it does not, start date as the date entered. Then checks if 101 exists or not. If it exists, so the end date will be January 3rd January 2003. The problem is which 101 record has to be updated. So there are two records of 101 in your head office. Which record we need to update? We should update the record which has null value in your head office. Null value in your head office. That record has to be updated. We identify it by the surrogate key. One which update, need to update the 7000 surrogate key that we went update this 3rd January 3. Then we insert the 1 Florida as a new record in my dimension table or in my head office. So this is called SCD type 2. The logic in SCD type 2. So if you like our simple English, if you want to understand it, what we do? We take the data from staging area. If the first we'll check if the employee ID exists. Dimension table. It does not exist. We will insert along with the number and date entered from the staging table which is coming in with the start date. It does not exist. What we do? But if it does exist, that is the raw ID coming from my staging has exist in dimension. What we do? The exist employee ID. If it exists, first we have to update the dimension table for the end date. What we do? The end date, how will we capture? That is date entered 1. Date entered is coming from my staging. Then insert along with sequence number, date entered coming from my stage, okay, start date, then so this is the logic we have come up after we have this. So another when we are updating the records, same employee ID has multiple values, multiple records, then we need to check only the records which has end date as null value, so that we can update only those records. Only those records we can identify by a surrogate key. This is a surrogate key for all the records whose end date is null. This if you have multiple records of your employees in the target table, that is the logic. So the record does not exist, you insert it and date entered will start date. Record exists, you update the end date in the target table, get the end date, the form. The day we capture is date entered -1, then we insert the record. So if you observe, you are doing 3 DML activities. One, insert, the record does exist, that is else, or update. 3 DML activities you are doing this, and while inserting the data, what we are doing, we are putting a sequence number. Here also we need to put a sequence number. So insert number, insert sequence number. So you need to do insert or else update and insert the records in your target table. So this is the basic logic to it. Now to do this, what we do in Informatica, go step by step. Source, that is the staging table. Your source staging table. What we do, we will find out date entered. We will calculate the end date. Calculate the end date. We use explicit transformation. This is the end date. End date is nothing but the date entered -1. Okay. Then we need to find out the record exists or not in my target table. That employee ID exists in my target table or not. So we use transformation called of transformation. We'll take the columns as employee surrogate key and employee ID. Because we have multiple values, we will use the surrogate key. So for updating the data in my target table, I will take based on the surrogate key. Then the router. What are the conditions you put? If that employee ID you are taking from here to this condition fails, but the record does not exist, so it will return a null value. For that reference, I will take employee surrogate key. Either you take employee ID or employee surrogate key. Columns of sub table will not make a difference, but we will take employee surrogate key because when we update this record, should be to be done by employee surrogate key is null. Employee surrogate key, we will rename this the lookup coming from the lookup is null. If it is null, what we should do? We should insert the record in my target table. So I will use update strategy. This will write the DD underscore insert. Then we load the data into the target table and we use a sequence generator because we want a sequence number. So the other condition we look into it, the router is not is null. Employee surrogate key. Not is null employee surrogate key. If it is not null means your condition satisfied for this employee is equal to employee ID. So what we should do, that is the record exists in my target table. We need to update the record. So I use update strategy and in that I will write the DD underscore update. At which columns I need to update the records in my target table? I need to update only the employee ID. My target table based on the employee surrogate key, I need to update only the end date. So the end date has to be updated based on the employee surrogate. We will only take 2 columns of the target table. Then another condition is we need to insert the data. We need to insert the record if the record exists in my target table. Insert the record which is coming from my staging. Data has to be inserted along with the sequence number. So we use another update strategy. Use in the router another router condition. Not is null. Employee surrogate KP. Same condition because for the same condition only if the record exists, we need to insert it. So for the same condition router grouping, I'll write it and I'll put a update strategy in this. This DD underscore. So in your SCD type 2, what we are doing is we are extracting the data table, calculating end date for each record, but we'll use only end date if the record exists. Then I will use the lookup transformation to check if the record exists or not. If the record exists, I will update and also I insert the record. If the record does not exist, then I will insert the record. That is null in the employee. I'll check for the employee surrogate key coming up. If null, that means failed. If the condition failed, it will return a null value. Then I will go and insert it. The record doesn't exist, then I will route it, one for updating the end date and the other for data along the number. So in your mapping, how we will do the logic. Let us do it step by step. Let's assume that 2 records are there in my regional office. They are sent it to staging area. Now we should understand this. Your source, your staging, from staging to the head office, how to insert the records. The record does not. So your mapping, I do the expression transformation, calculate. Now you have the source qualifier, the expression transformation. For date entered, during the expression we call it as start date. Date entered is not start date. That when you load the data, clear what we are doing is date entered is nothing but a start date for us. Then we calculate end date, that is start date minus 1. Then do a lookup employee ID coming from my staging table condition upon employee ID. Then we do a router. First condition, the record exists or not. My target in my lookup table, the record does not exist. It will return a null value. If it returns a null value, that record has to be inserted. So I will use update strategy transformation. The router will generate the target table. This date I only take the start date, I won't end the date. Now when you execute this mapping, first time the STG employee table data will be extracted, upon which we are doing and fire the select gets the data into the lookup cache. The lookup cache. There is no data in the lookup cache. There is no data in my table. Then one record at a time, informatica processes, goes to the expression transformation. 01 scans the cache, does not exist. Scans the cache, it does not exist. So we have taken employee surrogate key, return a null value. The record does not exist. Condition failed. So employee surrogate key and employee ID coming from will have null value. I'll take in for that particular 101 employee surrogate key null. Goes to the router. The employee surrogate key null. Yes. Update strategy transformation along with that new number. Search the target table. Then we'll take the second record from the qualifier 102 Texas 2nd January 2000. Scans the cache, does not exist. So it will return a null value. Express transformation, calculate the start date and it. Then goes to the employee surrogate key null value for 102. It goes and the update strategy is set along with a target. Now next day, for example, your regional data and your head office data. 103 joined in Florida, 101 moved from San Jose to Virginia, so we updated the data in your source. We extracted the data of what we required, that is 3rd January, into staging. From staging, my dimension employee load takes place. Text if 103 exists in the head office, does not exist. Go and insert it along with the number, and date entered will be your start date. And if 101 exists, calculate that the date entered minus 1, that is, calculate the start date, end date, sorry. So it goes and updates the record for that particular employee. Then you insert the new record 101 along with the number. Now we are going to discuss about the how to do it in Informatica. This step. Already we have created this mapping. Till your first time when the employee ID does exist or not, does not exist, we have inserted the two records into your target table. Now we will need to find if that employee ID exists, and what we need, one is to update, another is to insert the records. For that, if the record exists or not, if the record exists, it will return in null. If the record exists, it will not be null. If it is not null, then the corresponding record, that end date, should be updated with that employee surrogate key value. And also I will use the same router condition because it is the same condition, so I insert it along with the new number. So let's look at it. So when you execute this mapping, from the source data has come. From the target, got the targeted data in their lookup. Other columns we removed for better performance. We require only employee surrogate key and employee ID from target table on which you are doing lookup. Informatica does one row at a time process. 103 comes in. 103 goes to the lookup, scans the cache, does not exist. So it will return a null value, and your end date is calculated. Then the router transformation is null employee ID, surrogate key lookup, yes. Then it will go to the DD underscore insert, update strategy first one, and along with the new sequence number, what will be inserted into the target table. Then 101 comes in, goes out, 101 scans the cache, record exists in my lookup cache, so it will return 7001 and 1 for my lookup columns, lookup ports, and output 7001, the surrogate key, 101 Virginia, 3rd January. 7001 is record which is existing in my target table, and this is the record which is data coming from my staging table, goes to the router transformation, checks the employee surrogate key null, no, not null, yes. What we should do, the record exists, update it in the date for that particular surrogate. That will go into your update strategy transformation. Both conditions are true, so it will return both out transformation. First it will go and update the records in my target table. Consider here it has updated it. Then 7004 along with the number which is inserted into target table. So how this SCD type 2 works, complete history plus current data in your dimension table. Let us look at the next scenario where 104 joined in Phoenix, inserted into your regional office. 101 moved from Virginia to Florida on January regional office. You should assume that this data from this we are getting in staging table, that you should assume how to get the data, this coding called incremental loading, how it will be done, will be later in our mappings. But for today you understand that you are extracting the data from staging dimension table. So 104 from the staging, check the record exists or not. Does not exist in my head office, so I insert it as a new record with a number. 101 exists, but there are two records. How will you identify which record? We'll identify by the end date which is null, the record which is null, that end date. Then we identify by the surrogate key. So 7004 end date null for 101 of 4. You find up January. Then you insert it as a new record. Now in your mapping, what we do? Get only the records which are not null. Let's look at the scenario here to understand it very clearly. Now when this mapping is executed, for the records in this 7001 101, all the records come from this target table, your lookup cache, and these are the records coming from the staging table. Now look at this mapping. When you execute this, it will get this data into the cache of lookup. First it will fire a select statement, select employee surrogate employee from team employee data. So it will get you the data. into the cache. First record comes in, 104 comes in. 4 scans the cache for that employee ID in the lookup does not exist in a null value. If it returns a null value, that we assume that it is a new record. So if null employee surrogate key lookup yes, so we insert it along with the new number. Now when 101 comes in, scans the cache, then it finds 2 records. Please observe it, finds 2 records. So which one should we take? Which record we should take from this? That record we need to update in the target table. Then we will write, somehow get the records into lookup cache where the end date is null of your target table. This can be achieved by writing a query to view the data with end date is null. You can write a query that is called SQL override. I will show you how to override it in your lookup transformation, but understand the concept, understand the logic, how to job. Why we are doing that end date is null? Because we are getting multiple records for the same employee. Then which record to be updated? We cannot identify it. So take only the records which as end date is null. We will write it in the lookup SQL override. Now assume that we have written an SQL override, that is select employee surrogate key employee ID from dimension employee table where end date is null. That will be written in the lookup transformation. We will show you that. So we'll go and write that query, so it will get only the records whose employee end date is null. That will be written by this query, gets you only with end date is null. So get 7001, that is the end date 7003 7002. Sorry. So when 101 comes in, scans the cache, it finds only the records in this cache. End date is null, so 7002, 7003 and 7004 records only. So it finds employee surrogate 7004. Go and update for 7004, 3rd January 2003. Updates the record, your target table for 3rd January, and a new record with 7006 inserted into target table. So now your dimension table contains history plus current records. Now how we are going to do it in Informatica, that's what I am going to do this again in my Informatica designer mapping. So let us do the mapping. First step, when you do the mapping, source code from database, connect to the staging database, so STG employee table is your source. Target import from database to TGT. Team underscore employee table. That is your target. Then we will create the mapping now. Mapping create dim underscore 12 underscore dim underscore employee. Now we will take the source STG employee table. Now we are going to get what we need from our mapping. We need to find the end date, and date entered we rename it as start date in our expression transformation. We calculate end date. So we create a transformation called expression transformation to calculate the end date. And what will take all the columns from this my expression transformation. Here I will calculate. I rename my date entered as my start date. Please write it down somewhere. I rename that the date entered as my start date. Then I need to calculate end date. The date, I'll make it as output port only. In informatica, you cannot say start date minus 1. Write the function like this, add to date. Please write it down. Add to date is a function, start date comma, single quotes td, minus comma minus 1. Please write it down. That's find the end date, that is start date minus 1. Find out we have function, and start date is nothing but your date entered. Start date is nothing but your date entered. We renamed it. If you don't rename it, then this function will not work. We're putting start date there. So this is the start date, and you calculated the end date. Now we need to find out lookup. Find the lookup on dimension employee table. We will import it from the relational target database substructure dimension employee table. So for better performance, what we do, we'll remove the columns which we don't require it. So you have that employee ID coming from my staging table, that is my source. So I remove the columns which I don't require for better performance. I'll keep only employee key, that is your surrogate key, employee ID, and this is my input. So in any lookup transformation, L plus I is the input port, O is output, L is lookup port. The ports which are coming from the table on which you did the lookup or on a flat file is that are indicated by that L port, and you can take those values out. That's why they are out. Also, regarding R port, we will discuss later. Now we'll specify the condition. Be careful here. The condition is employee ID, not employee. Therefore, this is employee ID of the lookup table, and employee ID which is coming from my input. I have renamed as employee ID. Now what we need to do, create a transformation called router for your dimension employee table logic, streaming the data into multiple targets. So I will take the employee key and all the columns from my source router transformation. My employee key coming from my lookup. I rename it for my lookup. So we rename that employee key to that lookup LKP, and we'll write the group condition. One is to insert a new record. I say new, insert a name for that group, where I will write the group condition as is null employee ID lookup, employee key lookup, is null employee key lookup, is null employee key lookup. One condition, please write it down. I'll build step by step, so please understand it very carefully. So this is for your where employee ID is null, employee lookup null, that indicates that record does not exist. So transformation, create, update strategy. In this I will write the, for my insert, UPD is the syntax. Please write it down, your syntax for update strategy. Convince. I don't take the employee key, please. I take employee ID till my start date. That record has to be start date from employee ID. Then properties. Yes, I will specify DD underscore insert. And you say OK. Then transformation create sequence generator, because we need a sequence number for my employee surrogate key. So I create a sequence generator transformation. Now to load the data into the target table, I drag my target table. This dimension employee table. For this I put the next val employee key, and all these columns from employee to the start date I will link to my target table. So I have completed this stream from router, first group condition, insert, employee surrogate key, the sequence generator transformation. Now if that employee ID exists, what we should do, that is what we are going to do now. The employee ID exists, so this router transformation, the employee key will contain a value. If it contains a value, what we should do, we need to, existing record should be updated. So what is the condition we write? Please write it down. It is not is null employee ID, not is null employee key sub, not is null employee key sub. Then we need to update the record in my target table for that end date based on the surrogate key. So I use the update strategy transformation. Another update strategy transformation for existing record update. What are the columns you take from this group condition? Employee key and end date only, because we are going to update the end date only in your target table. So I write the property here as dd underscore update. Do not forget this. It will give incorrect data. It's dd underscore update. dd underscore update. Into which target? We will create multiple instances of our targets. So what we will connect to? Connect the employee key to the employee key. Based on the primary key, it will go and update the end date. It will go and update the end date. So we have completed this logic. Now we'll create the same condition, another group condition, the insert and employee surrogate. So in the router transformation, group condition. So they exist for that existing new insert, the new insert. One group condition. Here the condition is not is null employee key lookup, and you say validate. Say OK. Another group condition we have created. From here you will get you have to take the data and insert it into your target table. So I use another update strategy transformation to existing insert. I name it as. Then I will take employee ID till start date only. Please observe this, till employee ID start date only. Employee ID till start date only to be inserted along with a new number. No need to create a new sequence generator transformation. The existing sequence generator transformation only, and put it in this dimension table. and from this employee ID, the start date linked to the target table, then arrange all iconic. This is how you build the mapping. Now the last thing which we have to do in this is it should get the data into the lookup table. From the lookup table only where the employee ID end date is null. That is called lookup SQL override, where end date is null. That we need it. So we will override the default select statement. This is your default select statement. I override it where I say where end date is null. The syntax, this is called lookup SQL override, where you write where end date is null. That will give you only the records where end date of cache at runtime. Why we need that? At all there are multiple records. Get it? When there are multiple records in the target table for the same condition, we should find where end date is null. For that purpose, we write the SQL override. Because when 10 win, if we don't write where end date is null, in the lookup cache you will have multiple records for same one. So we ensure this by writing the end date null. How will we write it? In the lookup SQL override, we write where end date is null, and so at runtime it will get you only the data which is required where end date is null. So this is how you prepare your mapping expression. You calculate end date, lookup, find out if the employee exists or not, but you take employee surrogate. Based on that, you write the group condition. Null employee key lookup, not is null, not null, because you have to insert the record does not exist. The update strategy transformation, insert it, then you can generate it. The record exists to update only the end date for that particular employee surrogate. The target table, if the record insert it, then you use transformation. So this is how you build your mapping. So please open your sheet and enter this to import the source table. STG username, STG password, STG underscore your ID, TGT the ODBC connection, TGT your ID and the password. For lookup table, use the ODBC connection, the name TG, password is T. So please do write down in your sheet of paper of the worksheet which they have given you, ODBC connection, username, password, or input, then the target and lookup table. Lookup table is coming from TG, target is coming, source is coming, that is STG employee table. And also you please write it down, third dimension employee table. Please write it down, the source connection STG underscore your ID, target connection underscore ID, sub connection underscore your ID, workflow name, session name, source connection name, target connection, sub connection, workflow name. Please write it down. Then I will execute this mapping next few minutes. So please go ahead and write down in the session and workflow in dimension employees for loading the data into dimension employees table, session name, source connection name, target connection name, sub connection and workflow. Now let me go to the creating the session. For that mapping, task, create session, s underscore m underscore 12 underscore dim underscore employee. Mapping, source connection is coming from my trainer STG. 3 target tables, 3 instances, same target table, multiple instances. So They treat it as targets only. Connection, then change bulk to normal. Then the next connection, change bulk to normal. Another connection, change bulk to normal. Don't forget to give the connection for your lookup. Lookup is on TGT, so give the TGT connection because it is a target table. Lookup, don't forget it, you have to give this and you say OK. Then workflow, WF this underscore M underscore 12 underscore dim underscore employee. Save your work. Let me show you the data in the target table, 5 records. And there is no records in my target table. Now I execute this. First time it is loading, so it has to insert all the 85 records in the target table. It has to execute this. Let us go and check the data in my target table. I didn't change the employee key in the data, so it started at 1. Record count, 85 records have been inserted, and all date entered will be for start date. Next chapter we will discuss about more getting 2 sets of data and how end date works and all that stuff. But this chapter I want you to build this mapping so that you complete this mapping and run it once. So the next chapter we will discuss complete the life cycle of with data of SCD type 2. But this is how it works. SCD type 2 contains history plus current data. We need to find the end date, and in the lookup transformation check if the employee date or not. If then that has to be inserted along with the number. If it exists, and of that employee target you have with the end date, and also you have to insert the record along with the target. For the same employee, if there are multiple records in the target date, then lookup will get all those records, but which one record to take, we write a SQL override where we say end date is null. So it will get you only the records which are current at the dimension table. With this, I am done with my chapter 12. Go ahead and do the lab.